Hello there, welcome to the ninth episode of the series. In this episode, we are going to cover the basics of JavaScript. The last episode was just an introduction to JavaScript. We haven't even scratched the surface of JavaScript yet. However, this episode is going to dive a little bit deeper, covering some basic programming concepts like variables, data types, functions, and the rest. In order to follow along, make sure you have seen the previous episodes of the series as to know exactly what the whole series entails. Here's a list of what we are going to cover in this episode. We are going to start with variables and move on to data types, and then objects, arrays, loops, conditional statements, and also functions. So without further ado, let's get started. So I've already opened our previous project, which we talk about how to add JavaScript to our HTML by using the script tag. So now let's start with variables. Let me remove this line of code and remove this line of code. Now the variable is like a container that contains an information or a data. For example, this is a variable called name, and it can contain a value like someone's name, like Usman. Now, anytime we need this value, Usman, all we have to do is call this variable name. And to declare a variable, we have to use either a var keyword or a let keyword or a const keyword. Now, what are the difference between the var, the let, and the const? Now, the var is like an old version of an old way of declaring a variable, while the let and const were just added to JavaScript recently. And the var and let has a lot in common, unlike the const. Now, let's try to open this on the console. Let me save this. I have already started the live server, so you can start your live server and then click on inspect tools, or you can press Ctrl+Shift+R if you're on Windows, and then go to the console tab. Now let's try this. So we have a var of a name equals to Usman. Now with the var, I can be able to change the value of the name. I can change name to Moses, and nothing happens. And anytime I try to call the name using console.log, I'll get the recent value, which is Moses. Let me try to use let and declare a value, fruit equal to apple. Now, okay, the reason why it shows us that fruit has already been declared is because we already have it here running. So let's comment this out. Let's go back here, refresh the browser. Let's start with let fruit is equal to apple. And now the value of fruit is apple. If you try it, console.log fruit, we're going to have apple. But we can change the value of fruit like this: fruit equals to banana. And anytime we call fruit again, we'll have the recent value, which is banana. But now let's declare a variable using const. Const gender is equal to male. Now anytime I call gender, I will have the value of male. Now what if I try to change the value of gender? Gender is equals to female. Now guess what will happen? We'll have an error saying we cannot reassign a new value once we declare a variable using the const keyword. Anytime you declare a variable using const keyword, you cannot reassign a new value to it. That's the law. Okay, moving on, we'll go to data types. So you have seen me in the previous episode doing something like 2 plus 2, and then doing something like console.log Usman Hassan, or something like alert Usman Hassan. But the thing is, once I'm doing something like 2 plus 2, I didn't put quotation marks, like either a single or a double quote. I didn't put them there. But once I'm using something like characters, like alphabets, I add them there. That's because these are different data types. In JavaScript, there are three basic data types that we have. We have what they call numbers, and we have what they call strings, and we have what they called boolean. So these are the basic data type we have. Now, what is a number? Just take number as numbers from 0 to 9 as a data comprising of 0 to 9 without any quotation mark. For example, 2 is a number. For example, 2 is a number. Yeah, 2 is a number, 1 is a number, 0 is also a number, 9 is a number without any quotation mark. And you can add two numbers together, which will result to a value 4. 9 plus 1 will give us 10. 100 plus 100 minus 9 gives us 91. Now these are called numbers. And the next one is string. What are strings? String is any characters, including numbers, alphabet, or symbols, that are wrapped in between either a single or a double quote. For example, Usman, Hassan. This is a string. Another example is 2 plus 2. This is a string. As you can see, it doesn't equate to the value 4. It just show it as it is. If we try something like let's temp equal to 2 plus 2, then we say console.log temp, we'll have just the string 2 plus 2. But if you try something like temp is equal to 2 plus 2 using numbers, what do you think the value of temp will be? It will be 4, which was already printed. It will be 4. So these are the data type you have. And also we have what they call a boolean. Now a boolean has only two values, either true or false. For example, you can try something like let is number or is greater than is equal to, let's see, 5 is greater than 8. Now what do you think? Is 5 greater than 8? While it is not. 5 is not greater than 8. So is greater than will be false, as you can see. It results to false. But if you try to is greater than, if you change the value of is greater than to equal to 8 is greater than 5, we'll have a true value, because what? 8 is greater than 5. So these are what the kind of values or statements that can result to either to a boolean value, which is either true or false. And one thing again, let's go back to variables and talk about them a little bit. So I have my console a little bit busy. Let me just clear it by clicking on this icon, clear console. Now let's talk about variables. We know that to declare a variable, we have to call the declaration keyword, which is either let, const, or var. So let's use var. Var name is equal to Usman. So what if this is my first name? Okay, I made a mistake here. If you guys can find it, yeah, the mistake was from here. I should not have put this equal sign here. So let me try it again. Var name is equal to Usman. Now this is my variable. Var name is equal to Usman. So now what if this is my first name and I want to make it my first name? I want to create a variable called my first name and then store Usman inside of it. So you might think I'll do something like this. Var first name is equal to Usman. Now this is very wrong. In variables, when declaring a variable, you cannot put space between them. You cannot put any special character except two characters, which is $sign and underscore. For example, if you try to press enter to declare this variable, it will give us an error, unexpected identifier. But if you try something like this, var first and then underscore name is equal to Usman, this will give us what we really wanted. And anytime we call the variable first name, we'll still have it. Or we can do something like var first, then put a $sign in between, name equal to Usman. Still have our value for our first name with our $sign, still have our value. So the only special characters a variable can contain is underscore and a $sign. So moving on, we'll talk about objects. So what's our object? Well, object is anything that has a property and a value. For example, a person is an object, a car is an object because it has property and a value, and also a country is an object. So how does an object look like? You can declare an object like this: var country is equal to, then we use curly braces to declare an object. Now once we press enter, we have declared an empty object that has no properties and a value. Now to add a property and a value to this object, we have to call the country variable and add a dot, and then call the name of the property you want to give. For example, country.name is equal to something like Nigeria. Now anytime we call our country object, for example, console.log country, we'll have an object that has a name property and a value. Now the name is on the left hand side and the value is on the right hand side. They are both separated by a colon. Now if you want to add a new property again, we have to call the variable country.continent is equals to Africa. Now let's call our country variable again. Now you can see we have two properties and two values. Yeah, the first property is name and the value is Nigeria. The second property is continent and the value is Africa. Now to remove or to replace or to update a value in a property, you can do something like this. Let's see, country.name is equal to Ghana. Now our country will no longer be Nigeria again, it will be Ghana. Let's call our country and see. Now our country is Ghana, we have replaced it. So this is how object works in JavaScript. Another example is we can declare an object like this using const person and equals to, and then in between here we can put our default values. For example, name is equals to Usman. You can see hobbies is equals to singing, then close it, and then you can close it with curly braces. Now this is an object of a person with properties like name and hobbies. Now let's print this person out and see. Person will have the object we created. Now you might be thinking that we cannot replace the values of these objects because we declared this variable with const, but that's not the case. To do that, we just have to call the name of the variable person.name is equals to Philip. Let's replace the value with Philip, and then anytime we call the person object, we'll have the new value changed. But the thing is, we cannot replace this variable like this. Person is equals to name Mike, hobby swimming, and then we cannot do something like this. We have to replace those values using their properties instead of replacing the whole value. That's how object works. Now the next on the line is arrays. So what are arrays? Just take arrays as a list of items or as a list of data. For example, a list of countries in Africa. Let's do that. We can say const countries is equal to, let's start with Nigeria, let's move to South Africa, let's move to Ghana and Togo, and what next? Zimbabwe, and what next? We have Kenya, So let's stop here. Now as you can see, to declare an array, we have to use a what? We call this a square bracket. And then we can put the name, the elements, which are Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Togo, and Zimbabwe inside of them. But each element has to be separated by a comma from the other. For example, once we are done with Nigeria, we put a comma and then add South Africa. And once we are done with South Africa, we put a comma and then add Ghana, so that we can differentiate those datas, those elements. And now this is our array of countries. Now to get a specific or a single item from the list of countries, how do you think we can do that? Well, it's very, very easy. Now initially in programming, we start counting from zeros, right? I believe you know that already. So now Nigeria is at index 0, South Africa is at index 1, Ghana is at index 2, Togo 3, Zimbabwe 4, and Kenya 5. So now to get the index, to get Nigeria, all we have to do is say countries, right? Countries, and then put our our square bracket, and then put the index of the element you want to get. For example, since Nigeria is at index 0, we'll just put 0 there. And see, we have Nigeria. Now let's get maybe Kenya. So what do you think is the index of Kenya? It's easy. We can start counting from Nigeria, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So Kenya is index 5. So just put 5 here, and we'll get Kenya. Now this is how we can store items in an array, and also get items in an array, and also to replace an item in an array. How do you think we can do that? Well, it's easy. Now to replace, let's say, Togo with Mali, how can we do that? So let's find the index of Togo. Nigeria is at index 0, South Africa 2, Ghana 3, and Togo is at index, okay, let's start again, 0, 1, 2, 3. Togo is at index 3. Now to replace Togo, we have to call the countries 3, which return Togo, and then say equal to Mali. Now this will replace the value of Togo to Mali. Now let's try it. Let's call the countries and see. Countries. As you can see, we no longer have Togo, but we have Mali. And if you try to get it, countries index 3, we'll have Mali. Okay, I made a mistake. We'll have Mali. Simple. Moving on, we'll go to loops. So just take loops as a way of doing something over and over again, like looping through, going in cycles, something like that. And creating loops in JavaScript is pretty straightforward. We have two basic kind of loops. We have the for loops and the while loops. So we're going to cover the for loops today. And let's start with the for loops. So to declare a for loop, we have to call the keyword for and then put in our bracket, and then at the end we put a curly braces. Now in between our brackets, we'll have to provide it with three things: an initial value to start the loop from, second, a condition to continue the loop, and third, an increment. Now before we do that, let me show you something. How do you think we can get the length of items in an array? For example, let's say we don't know the number of items in this array, and let's say we want to get the value of the items. Now array has a method called dot length. For example, if you say countries.length, this will return the amount of items in that array. For example, we have 6 items here, so it returns 6. So now using the for loop, let's go on. For, we have to declare a variable, an initial value, so we have to use either var or let. So we use let x equals to 0. Now x is our initial variable, and it has a value of 0. Now let's try to compare x. If x is less than countries dot length. Now what do you think is the value of this? X is 0 and countries dot length is 6. So now, is x less than countries dot length? Yes, it is. If it is, then x plus plus. Now this plus plus, it's called an increment. It means to add 1 to a variable. It's to increment a variable by 1. Whatever the value of that variable is, we increment it by 1. For example, let's try it out. For example, we have let's apples is equals to 5. Let's say we have one more apples. We can say apples plus plus. Now let's call apples again. Console.log apples. We'll have 6 apples now. Let's try it again. Apples plus plus. We'll have console.log apples. We'll have 7 apples now. So let's continue with our for loops. So once we're done with the increment, we have to close it and then put in our curly braces. Now in between our curly braces is where we put the body of the function, where we put what actually should run between the loops. So we can press enter and say console.log and say countries square bracket, close it. And then what do you think we should put in between here? Should we put 0? Now if you put 0, anytime you run this function, it will just print only one of the items in the array, which is Nigeria. But since the value of x changes by every loop, we can put x. X is starting at 0, and then on the next loop it becomes 1, on the next loop it becomes 2, and so on until it reaches the length of countries, which is 6. So now let's try this. Okay, now we need to close the curly braces, so let's add the closing tag of the curly braces. Now let's run this, and as you can see, we have our countries printed: Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Mali, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. Now let me do this all over again so that you can see what's actually happening. Let me do a for loop for let x equals to 0, x is less than 6, x plus plus. Now we close this. Let me see console.log x. Now let me run this. Now as you can see, this variable is not compared to any array but compared to the value 6, and we are just printing the value x. As you can see, on the first loop the value of x is 0, on the next loop the value of x is 1, on the and so on. The value of x keep on increasing because of this increment. As long as x is less than 6, it will keep on printing. Since once it reaches 6 and we know that 6 is not less than 6, it stops there. Now we pass these values right in the square bracket so that it will be printing those items in the array incrementally, and this is how it works. So moving on, we'll talk about conditional statements. Now let's clear the console and talk about conditional statements. So what do you think is a condition? Condition is an event, right, that results to other event. For example, let's say you are trying to buy something and then that thing is not available. You buy something else. Let's make an example of conditional statement. Now to do conditional statement, we have to use the if keyword. So we can say if and then a bracket and then curly braces. Now I put let me do that again. If bracket and then curly braces. Now let's close this, and then in here in between the bracket we put our condition. For example, let's try this out. Let's say let's const name is equal to Usman. Enter. If name is equal to Usman, can do something like console.log hello Usman. Now this will only work if name is Usman. Let's change the value of name, or since we use a const, let's compare the name with another name. If name is equal to Philip, console.log hello Philip. Now I have nothing since name is not equals to Philip. So let me try to explain what this triple equal sign means. In programming in general, we have comparison operators, and we can use these comparison operators to check if something is actually equal to something. For example, we also have a double equal sign. For example, we have a variable, let's Mike age is equals to 10, and then we can check Mike age is equal to 10. Now this checks the value of what Mike age contains, and this results to a true value. Now if you try to check if Mike age is equal to 15, this will give us false, since Mike age is not equal to 15. Now we can use a double equal sign for that also. Still get the same thing, but there's a difference. For example, we know that we have different data types. We have strings and numbers, right? Now if we have a string of 10 and we compare it with a number 10, it will result to true. Yes, but if I have a string of 10 again and use the triple equal sign to compare with the number 10, we'll have a false. Now the double equal sign just check the value inside the data types, while the triple equal sign is a strict comparison operator that also compare the data types of these datas. Now to check the data type of a data, we can use the type of function and then put our value or data. For example, Usman. This will give us a string. Type of 10. This will give us 5. Sorry, this will give us a number, and type of true. This will give us a boolean. Now moving on, using the conditional statement, you can declare a new variable. Let's account balance equals to maybe 100. If account balance is equal to 0, you can say console.log your account is empty. Now so far we just talked about the if statement. Let's talk about the else statement. The else statement happens when the condition results to false. For example, when account balance is not equal to 0. So we can add the else statement after the if block. So else console.log account, your account has money in it. Now let's close this, close it, double quotation marks, close it, and close with curly braces. Now let's press enter. Now as you can see, it says your account has money in it because the account balance is not 0. Now I also have the else if block. We can use the else if block to make another comparison in case the first comparison fails. For example, we can declare a new variable. Let's name is equal to Mike. So let's say you are trying to check if name is Mike or Philip. So you can do something like this. If name is equals to, let's start with Philip. If name is equals to Philip, sorry, you can say yeah. You can just continue with this. Hi, hello Philip. So you can use the else if name is equal to Mike, and do something like this. Console.log hello Mike. Else console.log who are you. Now it is who are you and why, even though name is equals to Mike. So let's debug and find the error. Now this is not very good looking, so now we can move to our VS Code to execute something like this. So let's start from here and see, let name is equal to Mike, can say if name. Okay, let me zoom in so you guys can be able to see what's happening. If name is equal to Mike, okay, we are doing Philip first. Philip console.log hello Philip, and then we have our else if block. Else if name is equals to Mike, you can do something like console.log hello Mike, and then we can have our else block that runs if both condition fails. Console.log who are you. Now let's save this. Let's go back to our browser, and we have hello Mike over here because name is actually equal to Mike. So let's change name to maybe Osman and save this. Now back to our terminal, we have back to our console, we have who are you, since name is not equal to Philip and also name is not equal to Mike. So this is how conditional statement works. We have the if block that checks for something first, and then we have the else if block that check for something second, and then the else block if both if and else if failed. So now moving on, we'll start with functions. So what do you think are functions? So functions are a piece of code, a piece of logic that you can be able to use over and over again that can execute a particular task. For example, let's say you want to create a function that checks from the list of countries we have. Let's create our countries again. Const countries is equals to Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and Togo. Let's include Mali, and also let's not forget Zimbabwe. Okay, these are the countries I can remember. So now let's say we have a list of countries. Now let's say we want to create a for loop, right, that checks if there is a country Ghana in this list of countries. Now let's claim this function since we're not using it. We create our for loop for let x equals to 0, x is less than countries.length, x plus plus. Now let's execute this block. We can have something like this: if countries x is equal to Ghana, console.log found Ghana. Now let's save this. Let's go back to our terminal, to the console, and you can see it is found Ghana because we actually have a country Ghana in this. But let's say we don't have a country. Let's compare with the country that is not in our list. So let's say we remove Ghana from the list and save this and try it again. As you can see, nothing happens because we don't have an else block. So you can have something like else console.log Ghana not found. Now let's save this. Let's go back to the console. As you can see, we have Ghana not found, and it pinned this about 6 times because it has to iterate over the arrays 6 times to check for Ghana. Okay, so now let's say we want to take this piece of code and store it in a variable that we can call anytime we want to check for a list, to check for Ghana in a country list. So we can use a function. Now a function, as I say, is a block of code that performs a specific task. For example, to declare a function, we have to use the function keyword and then give our function a name. For example, check Ghana, and then we call a parenthesis and then curly braces, and in between the curly braces is where we execute our code. So you can copy this line of code, right, and put it inside of here, and then put it here. Now let's save this. Now if you go back to here, you can see there's nothing here. That's because we have to call this function for it to execute. Now to call this function, it's very easy. Just call the function name, check Ghana, check Ghana, and then add parentheses at the end. Now this means we are calling the function. Now let's save this. Let's go back. As you can see, it is Ghana not found. Now our function is executed. So what if we want to check for a dynamic value, like want to also check for Nigeria or South Africa or Kenya, or want to check for any other value other than Ghana? So function has what is called a parameter. A parameter is like a statement passed to a function that can be used inside the body of the function. Now it's not an actual value, but it's like a reference to a value that will be given to that function later in the future, so that so that the function can use it. For example, we can have a parameter in between the parentheses or bracket, as we know it. We can call it country, and then instead of comparing countries square bracket x with Ghana, we can do something like this. You can add country here instead, and then instead of adding those values, we can actually remove this and then plus it with the value of country. Now you can add two strings together using the plus operator. For example, let's go back here and do something. For example, let's say we have let's name is equal to Usman. Then you can say greetings. Let's greetings is equals to hello plus name. Okay, now I have to also use double quotation. You cannot use either, so let's call greetings. Now it is hello Usman. What happened is that it joins the two strings together, hello and the value of name, which is Usman. Now let's go back to our VS Code, and then here we can add country first, country plus, now let's remove Ghana, but make sure you have an extra spacing so that the words or the character sentence will not be joined together. Now let's save this, but also we need to pass a value here. So let's say let's put Ghana back on the list, comma, and let's say we want to check for Kenya. So let's copy Kenya and pass it here as a value, Kenya. Let's save this. As you can see, it is Kenya not found, found Kenya. The thing is, if we try to go back here, as you can see, Kenya is at the middle, right? So it starts counting from here. It starts from 0, which is Nigeria, then South Africa, then Ghana. So at any point it doesn't found Kenya, it execute this else block, which is considered no country not found. That's why we have Kenya not found printed 3 times, and found Kenya 1 time, and then Kenya not found 3 times again. So we can be able to avoid this by breaking the for loop, which we are going to talk about on the next chapters. So now let's talk more about functions, right? Now, assuming we have a bank, const bank equals to array. Now, or we can name this bank account equals to array, or just bank account. Let's start with bank account. Let's start small and then grow big later. Bank account. Now the bank account has a property of name, which is Usman Hassan. It has a property of account balance, which is a number, can be 100, and it has, make sure you use a comma, and has the value of pin, which can be 1 2 3 4. Now, assuming you want to create a function, we can remove our countries list or comment it out. To comment something out in VS Code, you press Ctrl/. Let's comment this out as well. Now, let's say you want to create a function that withdraws money from this bank account. Let's start by creating a a function. Let's name it withdraw, and it has a parameter of what? Amount. And then it has curly braces where we put the body of our function in it. But also we need to pass another parameter, which should be pin, because we can't allow someone to withdraw if he doesn't have a pin. So let's call it pin. A function can have as many parameters as you want. Let's call it pin. So now let's say, now to allow someone to withdraw, we have to subtract the amount he wanted to withdraw from the bank account balance. But before that, we have to check if the amount you want to withdraw is not greater than his current account balance. So you can do something like if bank account dot account balance is greater than amount. That is, if the money you have in your account is greater than the one you have, or is greater than or equal to amount. You can also have something like that. If the account balance is greater than or equal to amount, then we can run our function inside of here, and then compare it. If bank account dot pin is equal to pin, now we can convert this pin to a string, so that will be safe, because the user might actually provide us with a string instead of a number. But we can use double equal sign to compare the pin, but in this case we are using triple equal sign, so we have to convert this to a string. If bank account dot pin equals to pin, we can say bank account dot account balance equals to bank account dot account balance minus amount. This means we are subtracting amount from bank account dot balance and then putting the value back into account balance. And then, so what if the pin is incorrect? We can say else. We can show you an alert. Your pin is incorrect. And then, so what if his account balance is not equal to the amount you want to withdraw, or his account balance is less than the amount you want to withdraw? We can add an else block to the withdraw. Else alert, you don't have enough money. Okay, now to call this function we have to pass it two values, but to do that let's use prompt. Now we can see const amount to withdraw is equal to prompt enter amount you want to withdraw, const pin is equals to prompt. We talk about prompt in our last episode, so you must have known it by now. Enter your pin. So now, so whatever the prompt returns is always a string. So what do you think will happen if you try to subtract a string from a number? For example, let's say we have 100 as our account balance and we want to subtract 50 from it, 50 of a number from it. As you can see, it works since it is subtraction. But if we are trying to add plus 50, this is what will happen. To convert the 100 to a string, since addition makes sense, since adding two string makes sense, to convert both data types to a string. But if we're trying to subtract, it will work, since subtraction doesn't make sense on string, it makes sense on numbers. So then it will convert the string that is a number that contains a number in it to a number. So now let's move on, so we don't have an issue there. So then we can call our withdraw function. You can see withdraw, amount equals to amount to withdraw, and pin equals to pin, which is this. Or we can name it to something more descriptive. We can say account pin. Now let's copy this and add it here. Now let's save this. Let's go back to our browser. We have enter amount you want to withdraw. So I want to withdraw 50 and say okay. Ask me to enter my pin. I'll say 1 2 3 4. I'll say okay. Now nothing happens. That's because we're not handling a response once the amount is withdrawn. So we can see alert, your money has been withdrawn successfully, and new account balance is, can put a space and the plus, accounts, bank accounts, which is the name of our object, dot account balance. Now let's save this. Now let's try it all over again. We'll have enter amount you want to withdraw. I want to withdraw 50. Enter pin 1 2 3 4. And then we have an alert, your money has been withdrawn successfully and your account balance is 50. Wow, everything is working nicely. Let's try it all over again, but this time with a money that is greater than our account balance. So we put 10,000 here, and then we have pin. Let's enter our pin 1 2 3 4. Let's say okay, it is, you don't have enough money. Let's try it with a wrong pin this time. Let's see, we want to withdraw 50 and then put a wrong pin like 8787 and says okay, it says your pin is incorrect. Now this is a simple bank that we have here. It has a withdrawal method. Now let's create a deposit method whereby you can be able to deposit money into your bank account. So let's enclose this and then have a function. Let's call it deposit. It has amount, it also has pin. Let's put the body of our function, and we can start with if amount. Now I'm going to introduce you guys to falsy and truthy values. The reason why I just put if amount here is because an empty amount can result to a falsy value. For example, something like 0 or something like an empty string. For example, now to check if a value is truthy or falsy, it's very simple. You can do something like this: boolean and then an empty string. This will tell us that this is false. Now this boolean will try to convert this string into a falsy or truthy value, that is into any boolean value. Now since the string is empty, it is showing false here. Now but if we put something into the string, for example boolean will have true, because it actually contains a value inside. So there might be a scenario where a user can return an empty string, and that string is empty. We might try to add, if we didn't handle that exception here, we might try to actually add that whatever he returns, an empty string, into our account balance. And also 0 can also result to a falsy value. For example, 0 is falsy as well. So now we can see if amount, that is if amount is either an empty string or a 0, but in this case a string of 0 like this is a truthy value. That because it is a string and it contains a character inside, so it doesn't actually convert it to a number in our case. So it's okay if you have something like maybe our account balance is 100 and we try to add 0 to it, but this is the issue we have. We have 1000 instead of it being just 100. Now we can be able to convert any string we have into a number by calling the number function and then passing that string as an argument like this. Now we'll convert it into a number. So we can try something like this: boolean number. We pass our string like this. Now we have false. So let's move on. Now, to add any new value to our account balance, we have to first convert it into a number. So we can have something like this: if there's an amount, if amount is not equal to an empty string, then we move on. We can check if pin is equal to bank account.pin. Move on, and then we can see bank account.account balance equal to bank account.account balance plus number, and then we put our amount here. Now whatever we return as an amount will be converted to a number and then added to our bank account balance. Then we can return a message saying alert, you have deposited plus amount. Then we can add another plus and join another string. Let's put a dot here. Your account balance is plus bank account balance. So what if the pin is not correct? You can say else alert incorrect pin. Then we have, what if the amount is not valid? What if the user returns an empty string? We can say else alert amount is not valid. Now let's save this. Now first of all, we have to comment our withdraw method and then call, okay, we have to rename this to deposit amount, name this to amount to deposit, and then change this to enter amount you want to deposit. Now we call our deposit function like this, or we can just replace it with this. Let's copy this, add it to here, and then copy our deposit function, replace it with the withdraw. Now let's save this. Now we have here enter amount you want to withdraw. Now we have an error somewhere, it doesn't reflect, so we have to refresh our browser or cancel all of this and refresh the browser. Now it says enter amount you want to deposit. So let's say you want to deposit 100 naira and press OK. Let's put our pin 1 2 3 4. Let's say OK. Now it says you have deposited 100 naira and your new account balance is 200. So we have come to the end of this session, this episode, and all this code will be pushed to GitHub, and the link will be shared to you on the description of the video. If you have any question, you can comment on the comment section, and we'll see you on the next episode. But before we close, on the next episode we are going to introduce you guys to DOM, how to manipulate, how to actually interact with HTML elements using JavaScript. So thank you and see you next time.